My name is Dan Von Bargen. I am the Youth Program Coordinator for NAMI Dane County. And I wanted to chat with you tonight a little bit about specific to teens, mental health specific to teens in our schools, and some strategies and some things to consider, certainly always, but exacerbated by our pandemic. But before I did that, I really wanted to take a moment and just kind of, after a long day of school and or work, take a moment to just reflect. I can't help but think that, even though it's hard to believe, we're almost at that time of Thanksgiving, and I really want to just have everybody take a moment and just think about somebody that they are thankful for in their life, and feel that for a moment. Appreciate that person. We are all very fortunate to have that, and so I wanted to just take a moment to acknowledge those who we are grateful for and thankful for. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about NAMI. The National Alliance for Mental Illness is a national organization. A little bit about us, though, here in Dane County. We just happen to be the founding chapter of this national and international organization here in Madison, which is kind of a fun tidbit there. And so it's nice that Madison is a place where it was recognized and thought important enough to organize and get together to put support behind those who struggle with mental illness. There are affiliates in every state, including over 40 states, or 40 in the state of Wisconsin. And some of the things that we provide are support groups for both adults and youth in our schools, educational classes surrounding mental illness. We often come into schools via a health unit, and then if it gets a little traction, then we can take our ideas into support groups that kids can then, with the intent of having them being student-led eventually, and a group that's called, it turns into a club at the school called Raise Your Voice. And so that's something that's been very fun and very effective in some of our schools here locally and certainly nationally. And we are a free service. So we also have a support line that is something that is, I have it muted right now, but I'm kind of covering the office tonight, and it can get kind of as a high level of need right now. So that's for sure a valuable service. Next slide, please. So I'm going to have some figures kind of coming out here, and these figures are meant not to bring us down, but to kind of bring awareness, so that if we see a young person struggling, just remember that these are very real problems, and there's a high level of need. So 50% of mental health conditions will present by age 14, while 75% will present by age 25. And it's important to mention that of those who are struggling with mental health conditions, about 50% will actually seek help, which sounds like a great number, but that means that there's 50% that haven't taken advantage of any sort of therapy or assistance for themselves. So you can see some figures there. ADHD is 9.4% of the diagnoses. Behavior disorders are 7.4%. Anxiety, 7%. And then the depressive disorder is 3% of all mental health diagnoses. And then treatment rates are highest for children and youth with depressive order in ages 8 to 10, and anxiety usually emerges around ages 6 to 10. And behavior disorders can either be there almost from the outset, but really kind of manifest ages 5 to 7 or 5 to 10. And they certainly have been, mental health diagnoses have been raising exponentially in kids, and certainly during this time, if we are already going to be working in 7 schools in the area, providing introductory mental health awareness programs, and then a program called Ending the Silence, which kind of takes the stigma away from mental illness from the kids' perspective. And hopefully we can get those support groups very vibrant again. Next slide, please. So some strategies that are certainly important, especially with, and you'll hear others mentioning that it's our educational life has changed for our kids. They are now home with us for the great majority of the time. And so we're not only providing guidance as we would for parents, as a father of 3 as well, I can attest to that, but we're also the cafeteria, we're also the classroom. And so we're taking on different roles as parents. And so it's really clear, really important to make sure that there is very open communication about the challenges a teen is experiencing, especially during the pandemic, and that line of communication is open and kind of softened, and that door is always open for those conversations. Encouragement, have a predictable routine is something that you'll hear, I think, throughout all of our presentations tonight. But all the things that we all need, like adequate sleep and healthy foods, some downtime, and keeping connected with those peers that they've worked so hard to develop is harder and harder, as we know. If you see something, a substantial difference in behavior, it's real important to kind of think of, it's one thing to have a bad day or a bad week or a bad 2 weeks, but if you have a bad 3 months, that's kind of a telltale sign that extra help is definitely needed, and you should seek it out. Promote, really, again, coming back to those healthy choices, limiting exposure to our news cycle and to social media, not only because it's so upsetting, and bringing in kind of more positive, proactive things to consider and exhibit as parents will only help. And then it's also really important, if you're comfortable, as a parent, that if you're struggling, if you feel like your child can handle it, to exhibit those honest feelings to them so that they see it modeled and then can understand that it's okay to feel anything and it's okay to not be okay. Next slide, please. Some specific things for Wisconsin. I think I'm going to allow kind of, I know these will all be shared, but the Wisconsin Youth Risk Behavior Survey from 2019 are kind of some interesting numbers here. That you'll see that 50% almost, 49% report anxiety. And that's a 39% increase since 2017. And more than 2 out of 3 girls in 10th and 11th grade reported anxiety. Next slide, please. Which then, unfortunately, oh, back one, please, has increased the risk for suicide. And in the survey, almost 16% seriously considered suicide and 13% made a plan, which is a striking, sad and scary thing. But also, again, it's great that we have this data to know, again, how serious it is. Is there a way to slide the slide up for me, please? In our state, 7% of youth in the teenage years attempted suicide and expressed suicidal ideation. I'm trying to find that slide here. I guess that's it. Next one, please. Sorry about that. This is the one that got a little goofy. Interestingly enough, Black students reported significant decreases from 2017 in considering suicide, going from 23% to 11%, and the planning of suicide from 20 down to 11, which is a great number and something to celebrate. And for those of you who have LGBT children, that's a very high risk population, struggling with 42% have seriously considered suicide. About 19% of students who are LGBT say they receive help they need when in emotional distress, and the gap was similar for students with low grades as well. Next slide, please. And this help gap is where I think all this whole group is looking to assist. And it's even worse when looking at just the students who are considering suicide. Students who are considering suicide are half as likely as their peers to say, get help, most of the time or always. And 66% of students considering suicide said that they rarely or never receive the help that they need, and we must close this gap. So some of those signs are very important to get familiar with, but I don't want to take too much more time. I feel like I'm going over my allotted time limit there. So this last slide, though, is a important slide because it provides the resources that are really, really valuable that all should look into. And please do not hesitate to call NAMI Dane County. We're here for you. We're here to help.